Do you remember the silence? It's something I think about a lot these days, especially at night when my mind starts to race. It can be the scariest sound of all. You might be thinking, what do you mean? Silence isn't a sound. Well, that's where you're wrong. Silence is deafening, can be incredibly uncomfortable. And for those who suffer from tinnitus, it can even be painful. Now, don't get me wrong, silence does have its benefits. We need it to focus. We need it to rest. But when we don't have our usual distractions, that's when it creeps in. That's when it strikes. That unsettling feeling like someone or something is watching you. It can literally drive you insane. The silence was the worst part of being in lockdown, worse than the isolation, the fear of getting sick, worse even than the uncertainty of what tomorrow would bring. It was a constant reminder that we were alone in this, each of us facing our own battles in the shadows. Some people coped by filling their days with music, movies, podcasts. Others found solace in the sounds of nature, the wind in the trees, the rain on the roof. Me, I found myself listening intently to every little noise, every creak and groan of the old house we lived in. It was like the walls themselves were whispering secrets in the dead of night. We tried to drown out the silence, but it always came back, louder and more insistent than before. Then one day, during lockdown, the whispers became screams. It was a Tuesday, if I remember correctly. Rain lashed against the window panes, wind howled down the chimney. The perfect storm was brewing outside. Inside, the power was out, plunging us into darkness. The silence was thick and heavy, broken only by the ticking of the old grandfather clock in the hall. Each second dragged on forever, stretching the silence into an unbearable whine. Then it started. A scratching sound, faint at first, then growing louder, more frantic. It seemed to be coming from the attic above our heads. We listened intently, hearts pounding in our chests. Then we heard it again, followed by a heavy thud. Whatever was up there had moved. My sister and I exchanged terrified glances. We didn't need to speak. The fear in each other's eyes was more than enough. We knew what had to be done. I grabbed my trusty flashlight, its beam cutting through the gloom like a beacon in the darkness. My sister trailed behind me, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder. Neither of us spoke a word as we climbed the creaking stairs to the attic. Every step we took sent shivers down my spine, the silence amplifying the sound of our own breathing, making it louder, more panicked. The attic door loomed before us, its paint peeling, its brass handle cold and damp under my trembling fingers. I hesitated, then pushed it open, the hinges screaming in protest. The air inside was stale and dusty, thick with the scent of decay and the promise of nightmares. Moonlight streamed through the grimy windows, illuminating motes of dust dancing in the still air. My flashlight beam swept across the cluttered room, revealing nothing but cobwebs, old furniture, and the faint outlines of bats hanging upside down in the rafters. But the scratching continued, persistent, maddening, driving us deeper into the suffocating darkness. We moved closer to the sound, my sister and I, our eyes straining to pierce the gloom. There, in the corner, wedged between a dusty trunk and a cobweb-draped rocking horse, was a small wooden box. It wasn't much to look at, just a plain, unassuming chest with a faded floral pattern on its lid. But it was clearly the source of the scratching, the relentless tapping that had driven us to the brink of madness. With trembling hands, I lifted the lid. The sound stopped abruptly, leaving behind a ringing silence that was somehow even more terrifying than the scratching. Inside the box, nestled on a bed of yellowed tissue paper, was a single key. It was old, its surface tarnished, its teeth worn smooth with age. As I pulled it from the box, the scratching started again, this time louder, more urgent. Then silence fell once more, heavy and oppressive. The key felt cold in my palm, almost unnaturally so. And as I turned it over, I saw that it was etched with strange symbols and markings. They looked ancient, like a language from a forgotten era. And then it hit me, the realization striking me with the force of a physical blow. This was no ordinary key. It was a relic of the past, a conduit to another time, a doorway to the unknown. The scratching was coming from outside now, insistent, desperate, scratching to be let in. My sister and I clung to each other, terror freezing our blood. We knew what we had to do. We carried the box downstairs, our steps echoing in the cavernous hallway. In the flickering light of the fireplace, I examined the key. It seemed to throb with a dark energy, and the scratching grew louder, more frenzied. This was beyond anything I'd ever experienced, more terrifying than any ghost story or urban legend. This was real, raw, and it was happening to us. As the storm raged outside, mirroring the turmoil in our hearts, I inserted the key into the lock. The scratching reached a fever pitch, and then silence fell. It was the most terrifying sound of all. It was then that we knew whatever was trapped outside was trying to get in, trying to break free from whatever confines it had been bound to. With shaking hands, I turned the key, the scratching abruptly stopping, as if whoever or whatever was on the other side had recoiled in surprise. I opened the door slowly, and the stench of decay and damp earth hit me like a physical blow. It was coming from the garden. I stepped outside into the raging storm, my sister close behind me. Lightning flashed, momentarily illuminating the gnarled branches of the ancient oak tree at the end of the garden. That was where the scratching had been coming from. And as I looked closer, I saw it, a small hole in the tree's gnarled bark, just big enough for a small animal to crawl through. Whatever was trapped inside was clearly desperate to get out. And as the storm intensified, so did our fear. The scratching began again, more insistent than before, and the voice whispered to me, promising me untold power if I would just open the tree and let it out. But I couldn't do that. Not only because I was afraid of whatever lurked within that tree, but also because I knew it was wrong. It was twisted, unnatural. Yet the scratching continued, and the voice echoed in my mind, tempting me with forbidden knowledge, whispering promises of power and control. The scratching grew louder, more insistent, like fingernails on a chalkboard, grinding against my sanity. It was all too much. I screamed, the sound lost in the howling wind, and stumbled backwards. I fell, my hand landing on a loose stone. It gave way beneath my fingers, and I tumbled forward onto the wet grass. Dazed, I looked up to see my sister standing over me, her face pale, her eyes wide with fear. She held out a hand to help me up, and I took it, my fingers digging into hers as if they were a lifeline. She helped me to my feet, and together we fled, running blindly through the storm, away from the scratching, away from the voice, away from the tree. It took a long time for the scratching to stop, a long time for the voice to fade from my ears. When the sun finally broke through the clouds, casting its golden light over the glistening garden, It was as if everything had changed. The tree stood silent and still, its branches swaying gently in the breeze. The hole in the bark was gone, as if it had never been there at all. We never spoke of that day, not then and not for many years to come. The silence of the following weeks and months was a heavy weight on our shoulders, a reminder of what we had seen and heard. But as time passed, the memory of that day began to fade, becoming a distant echo in the chambers of my heart. That was until today. As I write these words, the wind is howling outside, rain lashing against the window panes. It's the kind of storm that always brings back memories, the good, the bad, and the terrifying. And as I listen intently, I hear it, the scratching sound, faint at first, then growing louder, more frantic. It seems to be coming from the attic above my head. I look up, my heart pounding in my chest, and remember that old wooden box tucked away in the corner. The one with the key and the strange markings, the one that holds the key to a nightmare I thought I buried long ago. I rise from my desk, my gaze drawn to the attic stairs. The scratching continues, persistent, maddening, driving me deeper into the suffocating darkness. I climb the stairs, each step groaning beneath my weight, the silence amplifying the sound of my own breathing, making it louder, more panicked. The attic door looms before me, and I hesitate, then push it open. The air inside is stale and dusty, thick with the scent of decay and the promise of nightmares. And then I see it, the small wooden box tucked away in the corner, its lid slightly ajar, the key missing. The scratching is coming from inside the box. As I reach for it, the scratching abruptly stops, leaving behind a ringing silence that is somehow even more terrifying than the scratching itself. I lift the lid, and inside, nestled on a bed of yellow tissue paper, is a single key. It's the same key. The scratching begins again, this time louder, more urgent, and the voice whispers to me, promising me untold power if I will just turn the key. But I can't do that. Not only because I'm afraid of what might happen, but also because I know it's wrong. As the scratching intensifies, I stumble back, my foot catching on something in the darkness. I fall, my hand landing on a loose floorboard. It gives way beneath my fingers, and I plunge into the darkness below. And as I fall, I hear the scratching, louder than ever before, as the voice screams in triumph, "Let me out, let me out, let me out." Then everything goes black. Like and subscribe for more.